When West and Schock revealed these findings in their documentary, the Egyptian authorities immediately banned them from continuing their research altogether. And the man responsible for getting them banned was this guy, Zahi Hawass.
I am Zahi Hawass.
When I do archaeology, you listen to me. Shut up! I don't want anyone to talk, or I will leave!
His official title is the Minister of Antiquities, but that basically just means that he's the spokesperson for what we're supposed to accept the history of ancient Egypt is. And in his words, West and Schock's research was nothing more than American hallucinations. This next part, I can't even make up. In 1996, a year after banning John Anthony West and Robert Schock from studying the Sphinx, a new $10 million project for digging the ground around the Sphinx was approved by the Egyptian government and was led by none other than Zahi Hawass himself. And to build up some hype around the project, they released a teaser video with the star Zahi Hawass entering tunnels under the Sphinx with not one mention of these American hallucinations. And the video showed Hawass entering the Sphinx through a hole which led down into an underground tunnel. And once inside, Hawass joyfully exclaimed on camera, "Even Indiana Jones will never dream to be here. Can you believe it? We are now inside the Sphinx in this tunnel. No one really knows what's inside this tunnel, but we are going to open it for the first time." And this is where the teaser ends, leaving many to wonder, what the heck did they find in that tunnel? Because 2 years after the project began, Hawass again reversed his position as he abruptly shut down the project and became adamant that there was absolutely nothing under the Sphinx.
Nothing is hidden underneath the Sphinx. What you believe, it's nonsense.
Going so far to even deny the existence of holes that go into the Sphinx altogether, which is kind of crazy because it's actually well documented that there are holes going into the Sphinx. Like this hole on top of the head, which is currently sealed shut with concrete, or this hole covered by a block with a tunnel clearly leading under the Sphinx, and this hole on the back, which Zahi himself is on video looking down into. But when asked about these chambers, all he says is, "We already looked and there's nothing down there. It's probably a shaft that was put there by treasure hunters." Really? A useless shaft from low-life treasure hunters? Doesn't seem to add up to me. I mean, if this truly was the case, then why not at least show us some picture or video proof? Why block off the holes entirely and ban anyone else from going down there? And why, with so much evidence to the contrary, is it still accepted fact that the Sphinx was built 4,500 years ago?
We cannot sensibly accept the insistence of Egyptologists that the Sphinx is just 4,500 years old.
In the 90s, the rebuttal to any evidence suggesting otherwise was always,
if it was built by a civilization or a culture that much earlier, where is the other evidence of this culture? Show me any archaeological site that dates to this period.
Well, that got blown out of the water completely by the discovery of Göbekli Tepe.
Located in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe was discovered by accident when a shepherd stumbled over a bunch of these old-looking stones sticking out of the ground of this hillside. For many years, it was assumed to be nothing more than a medieval cemetery, and it wasn't until 1994 when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began studying the site that a lot of other scientists started to take it more seriously. Because once they started excavating the site, it was found to contain large circular structures supported by massive stone pillars, each weighing 7 to 10 tons, standing 18 feet high, with many of these stones stacked on top of each other. And most mysteriously of all, it seems to have all been deliberately buried in the ground all at once, as if to preserve it or hide it altogether. And due to carbon dating of materials at the site, modern scientists have irrefutably dated it back to around 12,000 years ago, meaning this site predates ancient Sumeria, the invention of writing, and Stonehenge by more than 6,000 years. To put that into perspective, there was about as much time between the construction of Göbekli Tepe and the construction of Stonehenge as there was between the construction of Stonehenge and today, making Göbekli Tepe the oldest known megalithic site in the world. And that's not all. Many of these stone pillars have 3D animals carved directly out of the pillar with extreme precision and detail, and created at a time when the most advanced form of art was supposed to just be pictures drawn onto the side of caves with mud. It's also believed that these pillars represent stylized versions of human beings, since many of the top stones have what seem to be faces carved into them. An eerie fact when you consider where else you've seen the dichotomy of an animal body with a human head.
11,600 years old, a giant megalithic site. My goodness, if you can make Göbekli Tepe, you can make the Sphinx.
And due to the fact that Göbekli Tepe proves the existence of an advanced ancient civilization capable of creating monoliths, this site has become the smoking gun evidence that the Sphinx likely is much older than we've been led to believe. And the dates when both of these sites were likely created lines up perfectly with the end of the last ice age.
That is the date work starts at Göbekli Tepe, and precisely the date Plato gives for the destruction of Atlantis. So if Plato made it up, it's really weird that he picked a date that precisely coincides with the latest geological evidence on cataclysmic sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age.
That is, unless you ask Zahi Hawass.
Don't talk to me! Please! Go away from me!
April 15th, 2015, Zahi was invited to participate in a pre-arranged academic debate with Graham Hancock, who's the author of the book Fingerprints of the Gods, which first popularized Göbekli Tepe. Unfortunately, the event didn't go as planned because as soon as Zahi arrived, Graham was setting up his slides and he saw one slide in particular that really set him off.
Don't talk to me! Please! Go away from me!
And it was a slide that contained the picture of a man named Robert Bauval.
Robert Bauval turned his attention to the stars. He also dates the Sphinx to 10,500 BC.
Now, Bauval famously pointed out the connection with Orion's belt to the 3 pyramids of Giza, as well as the constellation Leo with the Sphinx.
The man is an amateur. The man should go and teach in a children's school.
And according to Graham, here's what happened when Zahi saw this slide. Zahi saw Robert Bauval's image and became furiously angry, shouting at me, making demeaning comments about Robert.
This man did bad things. I don't know who he is dead because he's a cop.
And told me that if I dared to mention a single word about Robert in my talk, he would walk out and refuse to debate me. Then Zahi marched out of the room.
Even before a word is exchanged, one image and Mr. Hawass leaves the room.
Negotiations took place off stage, and finally Zahi agreed to give his talk and answer questions from the audience, but he refused to see my talk or engage in any debate with me.
Why is talking about a kid that has been closed?
The theory is not closed.
It is closed.
No, it's not.
Okay, I closed it.
What Graham didn't mention though is what happened during the Q&A portion of Zahi's talk, when the lady in the audience, who was unaware of what transpired before the debate, innocently asked him a question about his thoughts on the recent findings of Göbekli Tepe.
Do you have a position on what impact, if any, Göbekli Tepe has had?
To which he responded by acting as if he'd never heard of Göbekli Tepe at all.
Or maybe Graham could explain a bit?
At this moment, it kind of got awkward, so Graham started to chime in and add clarification to why Göbekli Tepe may be a relevant question to ask. And Zahi's response?
I don't think the science sit the science. In my opinion, we know the nature of the science.
But pay attention to his word choice. He says phrases like, I don't think, and in my opinion. And let me ask you, since when has science ever been based on opinion?
What has been found in Turkey? I don't think, and I don't know if this is true or not.
And before even finishing his thought, he gets someone else to try to finish his answer as he retreats to the back of the room and sits down.
I have the human make a comment.
Now, I'm no body language expert, but why would one simple question cause a man to get so flustered that he has to retreat to the back of the room and take a seat as he nervously wipes sweat off of his face? I think the answer is obvious. He was subconsciously avoiding the question. And that's when Zahi said something that, in my opinion, should discredit anything he's ever said when he blurted out,
No matter the radar showed anything, because I don't believe in radar. I have been using radar all the world. It never made any discovery.
hold up, if you don't believe in radar, then why are you, quote, using it in all of your work? Believe it or not, I'm not mad at Zahi. I'm not even mad at the Egyptian government. If anything, I'm fascinated. What on earth could be so ground-shattering that people will go to any length, even denying scientific data, with nothing more than their opinion to cover this up?